why the Khorazin, the very words, and we understand it even in English. The word for woe is very similar in many languages. Guai in both Italian and Welsh, strangely enough. And it has that element of complete lament. Oh. And the reason for this woe is that there has been an abuse of grace. And thou, Capernaum, which I exalted unto heaven, shalt be brought down to hell. For if the mighty works which have been done in thee had been done in Sodom, it would have remained until this day. And we know what happened to Sodom, don't we? There are many Sodoms over the planet today. And what can we expect? But if the Lord has that to say about Sodom, what would he have to say about us? The problem here was that these that he was ministering to were refractory. They were deflecting the high-powered graces bombarding them. And do we not do the same? There is a fundamental law, it seems, in the spiritual life. Grace, abused, withdraws. I remember in the early 80s when translating the Purgatory manuscript in France, being puzzled by some of the questions that the good future Superior General, actually, who was here on earth doing part of the purgatory of the other by suffrages and penance, was able to get the very answers that she wanted from the beyond as the other nun was being purified progressively. It was a present that she was given. And so it is that as she wrote them down, we have some idea of certain issues that we don't quite understand on this side of time. But there were one or two questions about the salvation of this one or that one. And at one point, there was the question of Protestants. And if I remember rightly, the answer went in this vein. A certain number were saved, but they had a severe purgatory because they didn't have the same graces as we had. But it would seem, from what I remember, that there was this other question therein, that those that they did receive were oftentimes not abused. Whereas our fault as Catholics is that we have many graces all the time, and that we do not correspond with their force. Concretely, one sees it in the use of bad language, a few minutes sometimes after receiving the Blessed Sacrament, and so on. We haven't understood that there is a need for correspondence, collaboration. We seem to think that God is some kind of slot machine. It's the case also with incoherence in the realm of the sacrament of reconciliation, almost using it as a rubber stamp, a permission almost to carry on sinning. we haven't fully understood. Remember our prayer years ago in the Charterhouse, coming out with this in one sermon, all the many sacraments that we receive. Are we becoming saints? Now, it is something that we need to look at, because if we don't, others will. And I remember hearing this in student days. I was talking one time in Welsh to the president of the Welsh Christian Union, evangelical therefore, and he was bringing this question up of the way that sometimes he would see and hear Catholics using bad language. His expression was this: "Dydi geiriau ddim yn rasisol." Their words are not graced. In other words, there's an element there of compartmentalization going on. That we can be with the angels at one moment and be in a very different atmosphere at another. And I remember picking up also how it is scandalous to them to hear priests using bad language. Now, when this happens, it means that we have forgotten how close the priest is to the Blessed Trinity at certain points of his existence on earth. And therefore we need to ask the question, can we presume too much with regard to intimacy with our God, if that intimacy is on our own terms? To be close to the Divine Majesty is to be reduced to nothing, to realize our own nothingness, like Moses being told to take off his shoes. That holy ground means that we are truly what we are, the creature before the Creator. And to recognize him is to, at that point at least, hand over the control panel. Lord, you are Lord. And the Lord has warned us already about that in the Sermon on the Mount. The danger of saying Lord and not letting him be Lord. If he is Lord, he is Lord of all. Or he is not Lord at all. This then we need to be aware of, because we cannot have intimacy with the one that we're not surrendering ourselves to. It's basically a question of the will, and until it is handed over, we can actually be eluding ourselves all through our existence. And this same Purgatory manuscript warned about that many souls did that very thing, that things were never handled, sins were never retouched, and they had to be revisited there where she was, in Purgatory, for a long, long time. Questo Vangelo ci mette noi in guardia contro l'abuso della grazia. La grazia abusata si ritira. Gesù ha fatto tanti miracoli in questi posti e hanno sempre detto di no. Per noi sarebbe uguale delle volte. Il nostro priore nella Certosa una volta predicava su questo punto dicendo quanti sacramenti riceviamo e a quale punto siamo nella santità. Dio non è una machine, davanti a Lui siamo davanti al nostro Re e non c'è rapporto intimo possibile se la volontà non è aresa. È una grazia da chiedere, la coerenza che la signoria del Signore sia riconosciuta anche logicamente, concretamente. Mi hanno dato a leggere nella Certosa, quando ero in formazione, la storia dei martiri certosini in Inghilterra e la storia dunque del re Enrico VIII. E la conclusione di questo libro interessante andava in questo senso: cosa ha fatto questo re, cosa non è andato bene? E la risposta andava in questo senso: era l'abuso della grazia. Già avendo questa donna, Anne Boleyn, lei era già incinta e lui frequentava ancora i sacramenti. E il libro andava in questo senso, che il resto seguiva un po' questo, che dopo un certo tempo, se c'è un abuso di grazia, la coscienza fa fatica e si finisce in disastri sempre più grandi. Questo purtroppo non è stato tanto bello per l'Inghilterra, perché il risultato è stata una vittoria per il demonio, togliendo i sacramenti da questa isola grande, dove la fede cattolica era tanta forte nel Medioevo. I was given to read, when I was in formation in the Charter House in France, the account of our martyrs, the English martyrs, and what happened under Henry VIII. A fascinating book, terrible torments given to our fathers, who were dying in this dungeon bit by bit. And then the conclusion of the volume was this: what went wrong with Henry VIII, who had started so well in his faith? And it simply answered: the abuse of grace. When Anne Boleyn was already pregnant, he was still going to the sacraments, and on it would go. The problem is that the conscience then has difficulty in reacting. Grace is gentle. The Holy Ghost is the perfect gentleman. He doesn't boss. He doesn't invade. He courteously asks for collaboration. Grace, abused, withdraws.
La creazione giubili insieme agli angeli, ti lodi e ti glorifichi, o Dio altissimo. Gradisci il cuore unanime di tutte le tue opere. Beata sei tu nei secoli, gloriosa Trinità. Sei Padre, Figlio e Spirito, e Dio unico, mistero imperscrutabile, inaccessibile, ma con amore provvido raggiungi tutti gli uomini. Beata sei tu nei secoli, gloriosa Trinità.